It is middle of April. The sun is shining, the birds are chirping, and a deep primal sense of dread is slowly metastasizing in the pit of your stomach. You are sitting at your kitchen table, surrounded by a chaotic sea of crumpled receipts, cryptically named forms, and a calculator that you are staring at with pure, unadulterated hatred. You are sweating, your heart rate is elevated, you are terrified that if you carry a 1 into the wrong box, heavily armed federal agents are going to kick down your door and drag you to a windowless concrete cell for the rest of your natural life. Welcome to tax season in the United States of America, an annual tradition of psychological torture and bureaucratic Stockholm Syndrome. For the vast majority of human history, paying taxes was essentially just a guy showing up on a horse, pointing a sword at your chickens, and taking a few of them for the king. It was annoying, but it was straightforward. Today, however, we have evolved. We have created a system so aggressively complicated, so spectacularly Byzantine, that simply figuring out how much money you owe the government has spawned an entirely separate, multi-billion-dollar industry. Let us stop for a moment and look at the core fundamental absurdity of the American tax system. It is a system that operates entirely like a psychotic, high-stakes pop quiz given by a teacher who already has the answer key but refuses to show it to you. When you work a job, your employer sends a form, your W-2, to you, but they also send an exact copy of that form directly to the Internal Revenue Service. If you have a savings account, your bank sends a 1099 form to you and an exact copy directly to the IRS. The government already has all of your data. Their massive supercomputers have already done the math. They know exactly, down to the penny, what you made and what you owe. But instead of just sending you a bill or a refund check in the mail like a functional organization, they force you to sit down and guess the number. And if you guess the number wrong, you get audited, fined, and potentially prosecuted for perjury. It is an extortion racket disguised as civic duty. But why? Why does the most technologically advanced nation on Earth force its citizens to perform rudimentary calculus by hand every spring? Is it a constitutional requirement? Is it a law of physics? No, it is a business model. If you want to understand why your life is miserable, you usually just have to follow the money. In this case, the money leads directly to the corporate headquarters of the private tax preparation industry, giant software corporations that have spent decades and millions upon millions of dollars in corporate lobbying, ensuring that the American tax code remains as terrifying and confusing as humanly possible. Decades ago, economists and politicians proposed a radically simple idea called return-free filing. The concept was beautiful. Since the IRS already has everyone's data, the IRS should just pre-fill a tax return and mail it to the citizen. If it looks correct, the citizen signs it and they are done. It would be entirely free. It would take 5 minutes. Even Ronald Reagan, a man who fundamentally hated taxes, thought this was a brilliant, efficient idea. But the tax prep corporations panicked. If the government made paying taxes easy and free, their entire business model would evaporate overnight. So they unleashed an army of lobbyists on Washington. They spent vast fortunes whispering in the ears of politicians, arguing that a free government-run tax system would be an overreach of federal power. They successfully lobbied to pass laws specifically prohibiting the IRS from creating its own free automated software. They artificially created a massive society-wide problem. They used the legal system to ensure that problem could never be fixed, and then they graciously stepped in to sell you the solution for $119 a month. And it is not just the financial cost, it is the staggering, incomprehensible loss of human time. The IRS officially estimates that the average American taxpayer spends roughly 13 hours a year gathering documents and preparing their return. There are over 150 million individual taxpayers in the United States. If you do the math, that means Americans are collectively wasting nearly 2 billion hours every single year doing pointless paperwork. 2 billion hours of human potential, of creativity, of spending time with families, of literally doing anything else. Utterly evaporated into the void just to figure out a number the government already knows. It is a friction tax on human existence. But what if we refused to play the game? What if a society looked at this absolute circus and said, absolutely not? I need you to close out of your TurboTax browser tab and take a mental flight with me to Northern Europe. Let's look at Estonia. Estonia is a relatively small Baltic nation that gained independence from the Soviet Union in the early 1990s. Because they basically had to rebuild their entire government infrastructure from scratch right as the internet was being born, they decided to skip the paper era entirely. They built a fully digital society. And when it comes to taxes, Estonia makes the United States look like we are still trading shiny rocks in a cave. In Estonia, there is no tax preparation industry. There are no frantic commercials in April promising you your maximum refund. There is no shoebox full of receipts. When an Estonian citizen needs to file their taxes, they pull out their smartphone or open their laptop. They log into the government portal using their secured digital ID. Because the Estonian infrastructure is entirely integrated, a system called the X-Road, the tax portal already talks to the banks, the employers, the healthcare system, and the charities. The screen loads. The citizen looks at a single page. It already lists their salary. It already lists their capital gains. It has already automatically deducted their mortgage interest and their charitable donations. The math is completely finished. The citizen reviews the numbers while taking a sip of their morning coffee. If everything looks correct, and it almost always does, they click a single button that says Confirm. That is it. The entire process takes roughly 3 to 5 minutes. You can literally file your national taxes while waiting for a bus. Over 98% of Estonians file their taxes digitally, and the vast majority of them do it in under 5 minutes. And the cost to the citizen to use this incredibly efficient, hyper-modern software? Zero. It is a public service. Because in a functional society, the government does not view the confusion of its citizens as a monetization strategy for private corporations. Estonia operates on a philosophy that a citizen's time is genuinely valuable. They recognize that bureaucracy is a drag on economic output and human happiness. The American system, conversely, operates on the assumption that your time is worthless and your anxiety is highly profitable. We are trapped in a system of our own design, bleeding billions of hours and billions of dollars just to participate in society. We are paying a premium to be miserable. The software companies have convinced us that this agonizing, terrifying labyrinth is just the way things are. They want you to believe that doing your taxes requires a licensed professional or an expensive algorithm because the math is simply too complex for a mere mortal to handle. But it is a scam. It is a beautifully orchestrated, legally protected scam. The next time you're sitting at your kitchen table pulling your hair out over a Schedule C or a 1099 MISC, terrified that a simple arithmetic error is going to trigger a federal investigation, remember Estonia. Remember that it doesn't have to be this way. The technology to fix this has existed for 2 decades. The answer key is already sitting on the teacher's desk. We just have to stop paying the middleman to keep us in the dark. I'm Norman, and I need a nap. Hopefully, I can write off this headache as a business expense.